In such moments, raw strength is not enough, nor is blind persistence. What truly matters is the ability to think strategically, to see patterns others overlook, to step back when others rush forward, and to turn obstacles into opportunities. Strategic thinking is not about cunning or manipulation. It is about clarity, foresight, and wisdom. It is the art of aligning your mind with the hidden architecture of reality, so that every move, no matter how small, serves a greater purpose. Let us explore 6 essential keys to mastering this art, each of which can help you outsmart any challenge that life dares to place before you. Most people are trapped in the immediacy of their emotions, reacting to problems as if they were fires that must be extinguished at once. The human mind, when confronted with challenge, often contracts rather than expands. Fear narrows vision, urgency quickens judgment, and in this rush we confuse movement with progress. Yet true strategy does not live in this reflexive reaction. It demands distance, a vantage point from which the full shape of the situation can be observed. Imagine a chess player so fixated on a single piece that he fails to notice the broader pattern. Each move becomes clumsy, desperate, and in the end, inevitable defeat is assured. The true player of life is not one who rushes to touch the nearest piece, but one who waits, who sees, who understands the entire board before committing to action. This principle reveals itself most clearly in times of crisis. Consider the financial collapse of 2008. Panic spread like wildfire through markets, and many companies overwhelmed by fear slashed their resources, cut corners, and acted as though survival depended on retreat. They were like soldiers retreating blindly into enemy territory, thinking themselves safe but marching toward collapse. Yet others resisted the urge to shrink. Amazon, for instance, widened its gaze. Instead of focusing only on the next quarter, it studied the trajectory of human behavior and the rise of digital commerce. While others contracted, it expanded, choosing to invest, to strengthen infrastructure, and to build a vision that reached far beyond the immediate turmoil. When the storm passed, they were not merely survivors. They were positioned as leaders. Such is the power of stepping back and seeing the whole board. In our personal lives, the same dynamic unfolds. A heated argument with a loved one, a setback at work, a financial difficulty, all these moments tempt us to react swiftly. We lash out with words, make hasty decisions, or surrender to despair. But later, in quiet reflection, we realize that the crisis was not as catastrophic as it seemed. Often the true danger lies not in the challenge itself, but in the blindness it provokes. How many relationships have been fractured because one partner could not step back and see the larger context of love beyond a single quarrel? How many dreams have been abandoned because failure was mistaken for finality rather than a temporary turn on the path? To step back is not an act of passivity. It is an act of power. It requires the courage to resist the seductive pull of immediacy. Think of a mountain climber caught in a sudden storm. The instinct may be to climb faster, to push forward in panic. But the wise climber stops, finds shelter, studies the sky, and waits for clarity. By pausing, he does not lose ground. He preserves his strength, chooses his moment, and ensures survival. In the same way, the one who pauses in the storm of life does not surrender. He prepares. There is also a deeper layer to this. When we step back, we not only see the external landscape more clearly, we begin to understand ourselves. Challenges act as mirrors, reflecting our impulses, fears, and patterns. To rush forward blindly is to remain enslaved by those patterns. To pause is to break the chain. It allows us to ask, why am I reacting this way? What part of me feels threatened? Is this decision born of wisdom or of fear? In asking such questions, we discover that often the true battle is not with the world outside, but with the blindness within. Even in small, everyday situations, this principle transforms outcomes. Imagine being stuck in traffic, already late for an important meeting. The reactive mind curses, hunks, blames, and spirals into frustration. But stepping back allows one to recognize that the meeting will not begin until you arrive, that anxiety adds nothing but suffering, and that perhaps this moment can be used to reflect, to breathe, or to prepare thoughts more carefully. The situation itself has not changed, yet the entire experience is transformed by the shift in perspective. Life is full of these moments, large and small, where the path seems blocked. In such times, the instinct to force, to push, to act without clarity is powerful. Yet history, business, relationships, and even nature itself remind us that wisdom belongs to those who wait long enough to see the hidden patterns emerge. The river does not panic when it meets a rock. It bends, flows around it, and continues its journey. The strategist in life does the same, stepping back to see not just the obstacle, but the entire course of the stream. When we feel cornered, it is easy to believe that only immediate action will save us. But more often, what saves us is the ability to expand our vision, to recognize that the corner is not the whole room, and that doors may exist where we never thought to look. The art of stepping back is, in truth, the art of liberation. It frees us from the tyranny of the moment and allows us to act not as prisoners of fear, but as architects of our own destiny. To live wisely is to live not only in the moment, but slightly beyond it, to extend your vision into the horizon of possibility. The one who survives is not always the strongest, nor the fastest, but the one who foresees. Anticipation is the silent companion of every true strategist. It whispers questions that most ignore. If I move here, what might follow? If I choose this path, what doors will it open, and which ones will it close forever? Those who train themselves to ask these questions are rarely surprised by life's storms. They have already imagined them, already rehearsed their steps, already softened the blow by preparing their mind. History is filled with examples where foresight proved more powerful than brute force. Consider the great generals of the past. Victories were not won merely by the size of their armies, but by their capacity to enter the mind of their opponent, to anticipate his movements before he himself was aware of them. The battlefield is only a reflection of a deeper truth, that life itself is a battlefield where strength without foresight is easily defeated. The one who anticipates shapes destiny, while the one who reacts merely becomes a victim of it. This principle applies not only to grand events, but to the smallest exchanges of daily life. Imagine a difficult conversation with a colleague or a loved one. If you walk into it unprepared, emotions may take control, words may fly recklessly, and the result may be regret. But if you pause beforehand, if you picture the possible turns of the dialogue, if you rehearse not to manipulate but to understand and to remain steady, then the storm loses its grip. You enter the conversation not as prey to emotion, but as its guide. The ability to anticipate dissolves conflict before it fully forms. Anticipation is not the same as worry. Worry drains energy and paralyzes action, but anticipation sharpens awareness and strengthens readiness. Worry imagines disaster without direction, while anticipation imagines possibilities in order to prepare. Think of a chess master. He does not sit in anxiety before the board, he sits in concentration, quietly envisioning how each piece might move, how each possibility unfolds into another. His anticipation gives him freedom, because he is not bound to the present move alone, but to the entire flow of the game. In the modern world, This principle separates those who fall behind from those who lead. Businesses that ignore the shifting currents of culture and technology often perish, even if they once held great power. Look at the companies that dismissed the rise of digital media, clinging to old methods as though the future could be delayed. They vanished. Compare them with those who anticipated the transformation. Those who saw the coming wave of change and aligned themselves with it. They did not wait for certainty, they prepared for possibility. That foresight gave them strength even before the future fully arrived. Anticipation is also deeply personal. The student who anticipates the questions of an exam studies not only for what is written, but for the patterns of thought behind it. The athlete who anticipates the movement of an opponent's body finds the path to victory in fractions of a second. The parent who anticipates the needs of a child creates harmony instead of conflict. Life rewards those who do not stumble blindly into each moment, but who step forward with awareness of what might unfold. There is a paradox hidden here. To anticipate the future, one must be deeply rooted in the present. If your mind is scattered, distracted, or overwhelmed, you cannot see clearly enough to project ahead. Only the calm observer of the now can trace the threads that lead into tomorrow. A storm may look like chaos to the one caught in its winds, but from the mountain's peak, the same storm reveals its direction. The act of anticipation, therefore, begins not in anxiety but in presence. Consider how this shapes character. When you cultivate anticipation, you cultivate patience. You learn that not every impulse requires immediate expression. You begin to value timing, understanding that the right word spoken too soon may fall flat, while the same word spoken at the right moment can transform a heart. You learn that opportunities are not always seized by force, but sometimes by waiting until the door swings open of its own accord. The power to anticipate is the power to free yourself from being tossed about by circumstance. It is the strength to meet life not as an accident, but as a design. Every choice, every step, every word becomes more deliberate, less frantic. In this way, anticipation is not only a strategy for winning battles. It is a way of living with dignity. It is a refusal to be surprised into weakness, a determination to walk with foresight, and a faith that by preparing wisely, you can turn the unknown into an ally. Every obstacle that rises before us is not only a barrier, but a hidden invitation. Life does not place challenges in our path to destroy us, but to shape us, to awaken in us a strength we would otherwise never discover. A river that meets a wall of stone does not cease its journey. It bends, reshapes, and carves new paths until the stone itself becomes part of its momentum. In this way, obstacles are not final, they are transformative. They are raw material that can be turned into leverage if only we learn to see them differently. Most people interpret difficulty as a sign of failure, as if life has withdrawn its favor. But difficulty is not rejection, it is refinement. Consider the countless inventors, artists, and leaders whose legacies were born from setbacks. Thomas Edison faced thousands of failed attempts before producing a working light bulb. Each failure might have appeared as wasted time, but he saw them as essential discoveries, steps that revealed what would not work until the truth finally emerged. He understood what few people do, that every wall conceals a doorway, but the doorway is opened only by persistence. When we confront hardship, our instinct is to recoil, to shrink back, to interpret it as punishment. Yet what if hardship is the very tool that polishes us? Imagine a sculptor striking a block of marble. To the untrained eye, the blows may seem destructive, reducing a solid stone to fragments. But to the sculptor, each strike is a revelation, removing what is unnecessary, drawing closer to the figure hidden within. Life sculpts us in the same way. Every obstacle, every setback, every failure is a strike that shapes us into something greater than we were. In business, in relationships, in personal growth, those who thrive are not the ones who escape obstacles, but those who turn them into instruments of progress. During the Great Depression, many businesses collapsed under the weight of economic turmoil. Yet some, like Procter & Gamble, chose not to retreat but to adapt. With people unable to afford luxuries, they focused on necessities and doubled down on advertising, ensuring that when stability returned, their brand was etched into the minds of millions. The crisis became their leverage. What threatened to end them became the very force that propelled them into greater prominence. On a personal level, the same truth applies. Think of someone who loses their job. To many, this would feel like devastation, the end of security and identity. But to another, it becomes the spark that ignites a long-buried dream. Stories abound of people who, after losing what they thought was essential, discovered their true calling. The job loss became not a wall, but a lever that lifted them toward an entirely new life. The difference lies not in the event itself, but in the perception of it. To turn obstacles into leverage requires a shift in vision. We must learn to ask not, "Why has this happened to me?" but, "What can this give me?" Pain, failure, and loss are not without meaning. They are teachers disguised as adversaries. A broken heart can lead to deeper compassion. A financial setback can teach resilience and creativity. An illness can reveal the fragility of time and the urgency of living fully. Each challenge, properly understood, carries within it a gift. It is easy, of course, to speak of this in theory, but when we are in the storm, it feels different. In the moment of loss, the moment of betrayal, the moment of defeat, the mind resists the idea that this can be transformed. Yet transformation does not happen in an instant. Just as a seed must die before it sprouts, so too must certain comforts and illusions break apart before new life emerges. The darkness of the soil is not the end for the seed, but the beginning. Our obstacles are the same. We must also recognize that obstacles give us strength precisely because they force us to move differently. Muscles grow only under resistance. Without resistance, they weaken and decay. The same principle applies to character and wisdom. If life were smooth, if everything arrived easily, we would remain fragile and untested. It is the resistance, the weight we carry, that makes us capable of carrying more. The obstacle itself becomes the training ground. The strategist in life does not complain when the wall appears. Instead, he presses against it, knowing that in the very act of pushing, he grows stronger, and in that strength, the wall itself begins to move. This is why obstacles can become levers. They not only redirect us but amplify us. They teach us to use the very force of resistance to propel ourselves higher. So when the path seems blocked, remember that the block is not the end of the path, it is part of it. To see difficulty only as an enemy is to miss its hidden power, but to embrace it as an ally is to discover that every wall can become a staircase, every burden can become a tool, and every failure can become the very momentum that carries us to triumph. Strength is often misunderstood. Many imagine it as unbending, unyielding, a solid wall that resists the storms of life. But what appears strongest on the surface is often what fractures first. A rigid tree may stand tall in calm weather, but when the hurricane comes, its trunk snaps, its roots tear from the ground. The reed, slender and flexible, bends with the wind and survives. Real strength lies not in resistance alone, but in the ability to adapt. Like water, which flows around every obstacle and patiently carves its path through mountains, the adaptable spirit endures and transforms. Life is never static. Circumstances change, technologies evolve, relationships shift, economies rise and fall. Those who cling desperately to what was, hoping to freeze time, inevitably find themselves left behind. Think of the once dominant companies that believed their success was permanent. Nokia, at one time the leader of mobile communication, refused to fully embrace the rise of smartphones and the new systems that came with them. Their rigidity cost them what once seemed unshakable. In contrast, Netflix began as nothing more than a mail-order DVD rental business. When they sensed the changing tide of technology, they did not cling to their old model. They pivoted to streaming, and when even that risked becoming stagnant, they transformed again into a creator of original content. Today, they are not remembered as a rental service, but as a global giant. The difference was not resources or initial advantage. It was adaptability. Adaptability is not weakness. It does not mean abandoning values or drifting without purpose. It means carrying an inner flexibility that allows you to adjust your methods while holding firm to your vision. Water takes the shape of every vessel, yet it remains water. It becomes steam, ice, or river, but its essence endures. In the same way, you can shift, bend, and evolve without losing the core of who you are. This principle reaches beyond business and touches the fabric of personal life. Consider relationships. How often do people insist on holding rigid expectations of how a partner should behave, how life together should unfold? When reality inevitably deviates, frustration builds, conflicts harden, and bonds break. But when love adapts, when one learns to listen, to grow alongside the other, to flow with the changing seasons of life, the relationship strengthens, not because it never faced strain, but because it learned to bend without breaking. The same applies to our inner struggles. A person who insists on controlling every detail of life often ends up consumed by anxiety when the unexpected occurs. Illness, loss, or sudden change feels like unbearable chaos. But the one who adapts meets uncertainty with resilience. They do not deny the pain, but they learn to shift around it, to reshape their plans, to seek meaning even within disruption. Just as water does not resist the rock, but flows around it, so too does the adaptable mind find new ways forward. History offers countless lessons. Civilizations that clung stubbornly to outdated methods or resisted cultural change often collapsed, while those that absorbed, blended, and reshaped themselves with new influences thrived. The Roman Empire endured as long as it integrated cultures and adapted systems, but the moment rigidity replaced flexibility, decline was inevitable. The pattern repeats itself across ages. Survival belongs to those who adjust. On a personal level, think of someone who loses a career they spent decades building. For some, this becomes an end, a stone wall against which they break. For others, it becomes a doorway into reinvention. They may discover new skills, new passions, even a deeper sense of self that was long hidden. The job was not the identity, it was merely a form. By adapting, they uncover the essence that transcends form. Adaptation requires humility. To change course is to admit that what worked yesterday may not work today. Pride resists this, clinging to old victories, insisting on old methods. Yet humility opens the way to transformation. It says, I am willing to learn, willing to grow, willing to reshape. And in that openness, life pours in new opportunities. To think strategically, one must accept that permanence is an illusion. Circumstances will always shift. The question is not whether change will come, but how you will meet it. Will you stand rigid like stone, cracking under pressure, or will you flow like water, adjusting, enduring, and ultimately reshaping the very world around you? Water seems soft, yet over centuries it carves valleys, moves mountains, and creates canyons of breathtaking depth. Its power lies not in defiance but in persistence and adaptability. So too with the human spirit. If you learn to bend without breaking, to adjust without losing your essence, to flow without surrendering your strength, then no challenge can destroy you. Life's obstacles will become pathways, its storms will become teachers, and its changes will become the very force that carries you toward growth. There exists within every human being a tension between two forces, emotion and reason. For centuries, thinkers have tried to elevate one above the other, as if the heart and the mind were enemies engaged in a battle for dominance. Some exalt reason, believing that only logic can guide us safely through life's complexities. Others surrender to emotion, insisting that passion is the essence of being alive. Yet both extremes are incomplete. Logic without feeling becomes cold, brittle, and disconnected from the human spirit. Emotion without reason burns brightly, but soon consumes itself in chaos. The true art of strategy lies in uniting the two. Reason as the guiding hand, and emotion as the fire that gives it life. Consider how decisions are made in daily life. A person might carefully calculate the advantages of one career over another, weighing salary, stability, and prestige. On paper, the choice seems flawless. Yet if the heart resists, if passion is absent, that career soon becomes a prison. Conversely, another might leap recklessly into a pursuit fueled only by excitement, with no thought for sustainability or consequences, and quickly find themselves exhausted or broken. Balance alone leads to wisdom. When emotion and reason stand together, choices carry both meaning and endurance. This truth is vividly seen in relationships. The logical mind often seeks victory in conflict. It wants to win the argument, to prove itself right. But the deeper goal of love is not victory, but connection. To speak with empathy, to listen with patience, to choose the right moment rather than simply the right words. This is where harmony is found. Here, emotion softens logic, and logic channels emotion. The relationship thrives not because one side triumphed, but because both reason and feeling were honored. In the realm of leadership, the fusion of heart and mind becomes even more vital.